Have you looked at?
Probably 15.
And your bride's not feeling good?
Well, we had Project Love Food Distribution this week. Third Tuesday, Wednesday.
Well,
Yeah.
Had a busy yesterday, had a busy today, and
yeah, because
she's baking this afternoon.
Gotcha. Hey, Ron,
Yes, sir.
did you get Thursday solved?
Sir?
Did you get Thursday
I
solved?
think so, yeah, I think we're gonna work a compromise.
So is he gonna be all right being outdoors? Just thought I'd ask.
So is it still gonna be 5 to 6?
It'll be like 5:30, 5:40. It's not gonna be a full hour. I don't think you ever intended to be a full hour.
Oh,
So. yeah,
okay, so it's gonna be from 5, but it's gonna start at 5.
Start at 5 till about
Okay.
5:30.
You going to that?
We can watch it on TV and see what it's like.
Actually, you won't, because we're not gonna live stream on that.
You said, somebody said Sunday, yes.
Yeah, Vern did.
Okay.
Because there was no plan for that, so.
Okay.
If, but probably not. I don't know yet. I'll have to see. I'll go see how it goes. So, this week will be kind of a test. Test
Okay.
run of all this. We'll see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have to admire you. That could have become a very heated discussion, and it didn't. It was close, but it didn't get there.
No, it'll be fine. I'm not worried about it. It'll be fine. But, and it's only gonna be for 5 weeks, at least this point. And I think that the message is clear, though, that however we do it, this 5 weeks, and next time we do it, it's gonna be.
I thought Manny made a very good point about having it at 5 o'clock in the evening, if you're having new members or whatever.
Should be later.
Then it has to be later, because hopefully the people you're getting are working somewhere.
there you go.
Well, right, but Fern, that wasn't his call. That was the committee's.
Right, I understand that, but I said in the future.
Yeah, right.
And-
I think they'll learn that lesson.
Tuesday's an open time frame. Could be Tuesday night without any problem at all.
Tuesdays probably isn't.
Oh,
Yeah.
for the summer could be good.
But, no, we'll see how it goes this time. And, I'm willing to compromise. I'm willing to work with people, but, just don't surprise me like that.
Wait, who is this guy?
Yeah. And what did he do with our music director?
I know, most people think I'm just a hateful old codger, but,
Yeah,
and I am, but.
All right, we don't think you're an old codger.
just a codger.
A young culture.
Yeah, a hateful young codger, yeah.
What'd you do, throw Lori out? She's not here tonight?
She said this is the only day of the week she has to spend time with Dave.
I understand that
So
one.
It's like, priorities, girl, come on.
Yeah.
When is her PET scan?
Dave, right here.
Is it this week?
Friday. It's either this Friday or the next Friday. I know she said it was on Friday. I'm pretty sure it's this week.
Yeah, I thought so too.
All righty. Ah.
We're short on folks.
We are live, by the way, just so you
Oh, we are.
Live before, or after the old codger.
Harry and Jeannie are gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is Dee still ill?
Bee came to the meeting on Monday night, but she's not feeling good.
Yeah.
And it's off and on.
And yeah, she says it's a game time decision.
That's right. It's off and on.
And Carol and Don probably will be in here in a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they live so far away.
Yeah. Right near the door.
Just in a couple of seconds, you'll know.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep, I
Yeah.
can hear Walker.
We're coming. Welcome, we're glad you're here. We're going to delay for just a couple of minutes actually getting started, because we should have a couple more people coming. That's for the benefit of all you folks that are watching on TV. Hello, Carol. Hello, Don.
Hi, Don.
I'll try not to assault you. That's very.
Ones you got rid of.
Watch that cough there.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too good.
It's deep. Well, while we're getting settled here, not counting going to SeaWorld, have any of you here had any encounters or been with any places where you had large aquatic animals?
I've been out on the ocean this evening.
Have you? What'd you see?
I saw some whales, big whales, a lot of porpoise.
There you go. There you
I
go.
see some big whales.
Yeah.
Alligators considered aquatic
Not really.
every day.
I've seen we've seen whales off a ship. That's some small, some big. Dolphins. Some dolphins can get quite large, but the big whale. That's the one that's really fascinating. Really, that's when you see one of them, the whale especially. Now let's get real. Do you think it's possible that it can swallow a man, and he can get loose? I mean, that's always been a when I first started reading the Bible, and I got to that point, I was in this middle of, you got to be kidding me, okay?
But we hear miracles, especially.
Yeah. And then you think of Finding Nemo. Oh, that's a cartoon. I guess that doesn't count, does it? Okay. So, well, we may find out some different viewpoints about this subject tonight. Ron, are you ready to run a video?
Yep.
Well, let's do it.
All right, so welcome. We left our last session with the sailors on the ship confronting our missionary who hasn't bothered to offer them the gift of the gospel. And so we're going to pick the story up right there and see what moves forward. In many ways, this is my favorite part of studying Jonah because we finally get to start talking about large aquatic mammals. Okay, so we were called that the theme of chapter 1 literarily is that concept or that word to hurl. And we have seen that Yahweh has hurled wind. The sailors have hurled cargo. And in response to the sailors' request, Jonah has said, go ahead and hurl me. So with that hurling, let's see how we move forward. Right in the middle of the storm, the sailors are still questioning Jonah, and the narrator lets us know now the sea was getting rougher and rougher. And you'll notice in my slides that sea is actually capitalized, and it's capitalized because of this concept in the ancient world that sea was a deity. And as a deity, the sea had a personality, the sea could be offended, the sea needed to be sacrificed to. We have multiple myths coming from both Mesopotamia and from the Levant, which is Jonah's area, and even from Egypt, of the sea needing to be defeated by a warrior god who saves his people. So sea is scary, sea is dangerous, and sea, very interestingly, is also the mouth of death. So if you want to get to Hades in a non-stop, one-way ticket, don't pass go, don't collect $200, jump into the deepest part of the ocean. Okay, so now the sea was getting rougher and rougher. So they asked him, what should we do to make the sea calm down for us? And this is when our prophet says, pick me up and hurl me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know it is my fault that this great storm has come upon you. I like the fact that Jonah is taking responsibility. I like the fact that he is finally thinking about someone besides himself, because he knows that he's put these men at risk. And as you'll see in your study guide, one of the conversations we're having is how oblivious Jonah has been up until this point of the well-being of anyone around him. And how it is pagans, heathen, who finally start making him aware of the peril that he has placed them in. Okay, so the chapter moves forward. Instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not. Pause over that for a moment. We're in the middle of a storm that is so big and so scary that seasoned sailors are scared to death. They have already dropped sails, sheeped sails, thrown cargo overboard. Everybody's on the windward side of the boat. The captain, I'm sure, is still shouting, because what else does he have to do? And they do their best to row back to land. They're in the middle of the ocean, the Mediterranean Sea. You put an oar in, you know what's going to happen? It's going to snap off, if you can even get to the water in the first place. So this is a ridiculous plan, but it demonstrates how very much these pagans don't want to kill what they perceive as an innocent man. So whose moral code is impressing you at this point in time? So the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder than before, making it very clear that no, that is not the plan I am accepting. Then they cried out to Yahweh. Who's crying out to Yahweh? Oh, that would be the heathen. They cried out to Yahweh, "Oh Yahweh, please do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man. For you, O Yahweh, have done as you please." So the pagans, the heathen, the polytheists, the outsiders, have already recognized and reported the authority of the creator of the cosmos, whereas our little Hebrew academic PhD type, I get to say that because I'm one, is busy going, yeah, sure, throw me over. Okay. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, O Yahweh, has done as you please. Then they took Jonah and they hurled him overboard, and the raging sea grew calm. Is there another story you know about in your Bible where a sea that is raging and wild and professional fishermen are terrified, and one tiny event happens and the sea grows calm? And yeah, you do know it. And it's the story, of course, of Jesus and his disciples, who were professional fishermen, who were equally afraid. And the creator of the cosmos says to the sea, "Down, heel, sit." And the sea, "Down, heel, sit." Because he's the one who hurls wind. All right, so our hero is now cast into the midst of the sea. He is bobbing around in a sea that has suddenly grown calm. And at this, the men greatly feared Yahweh. Now, throughout the Old Testament, the phrase God-fearer is the phrase applied to Abraham as he is learning his faith, and it's applied to others who are either in the process or already embedded in a faith in Yahweh. They feared Yahweh, and they offered sacrifice to Yahweh, and they made vows to Yahweh. Does it get any better than this? I think for a brand new believer, no, it doesn't get any better than this. They've declared him God, they've offered him a sacrifice, and they've made their vows. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, Jonah's first missionary act has been accomplished. Did he want to be a missionary? No. Did he intend to be a missionary? No. But when these polytheistic sailors saw that the waves and the wind stopped, they feared Yahweh. What is the moral of the first chapter of this story? Our God is going to secure his witness from his missionary, however he must. And so Jonah, in his disobedience, winds up converting, or at least beginning the conversion process of a very rough and tumble crew of merchant sailors. So we leave this chapter with our hero adrift in the open sea. As a Hebrew, he probably doesn't know how to swim. Even if he does, he has almost no chance of survival. And so Jonah, our missionary who feared martyrdom, remember that's how we got here in the first place, now faces execution at the hand of his God. So we turn the page and we move into chapter 2 of the book of Jonah, and a new literary theme emerges. And the new literary theme is not to hurl, but it's to appoint. And so we go from the word tool in Hebrew to the word manah in Hebrew. And whereas we're assuming that Jonah had been appointed to be a missionary, although the word isn't actually used in the book of Jonah, we can make that assumption. We're now going to see who the creator of the cosmos, who hurls wind, is able to appoint to get his stuff done. And so in the text, we read that Yahweh appointed manah, a great fish. That's what it literally says in the Hebrew. And as you can see on the slide, dag gadol is the Hebrew that goes with this, a great fish. This is a completely non-scientific treatment of whatever the enormous swimming creature in the Mediterranean Sea on Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock happened to be. In the Greek translation of your Old Testament, which is known as the Septuagint or the LXX, it's translated into ketos. And this is going to become important. So Yahweh appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. And so it was that Jonah was in the inward parts, doesn't necessarily say belly, but inward parts of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Then Jonah prayed to his God from inside the fish. So how do we get from great fish to whale? Well, in Hebrew, great fish, as you see on your screen, is a fairly generic term. It's dag gadol, and it literally means big fish. It isn't specific biologically. The fellow who's writing this doesn't know exactly what the great creature in the sea might be, so he speaks of it as a big fish. But when dag gadol gets translated into Greek with the Septuagint, it's also called the LXX, the Greek version of the Old Testament, it gets picked up with the term ketos. And ketos has a broader semantic range and reaches over to the term whale. So when ketos gets picked up in the New Testament and Jesus uses these words, we wind up translating Jonah's big fish as a ketos, specifically a whale. And that's actually where we get our modern designation of the study of aquatic mammals as well, cetacea. And so we start assuming that this large creature was indeed a whale. We don't know that yet. All we know so far is that whatever has taken Jonah into its mouth is a critter that's really big and really scary. Now there's another item here that's really important. By the time we get to this place in the story, everyone assumes that getting swallowed by a whale is, stage 3 of a really terrible day for our prophet, right? He has gotten himself in trouble with his God, he's gotten himself in trouble with the sailors, he's gotten thrown overboard, and now he gets swallowed by a whale to boot. Well, let's pause and think about that. Where is Jonah right now? He's in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea. Does he swim? Maybe, and if so, not well. Where's his ship? Oh, well, that would be over there on the horizon. Where's the shore? Can't really see it from here. What's going to happen to our guy? Our guy is going to drown. And he's going to go down and no one's ever going to know what happened to him. And so when Yahweh appoints a whale, I think of this in terms of Yahweh whistling for a really good herd dog. Like a little shepherd of some sort who's really smart and, like Lassie, who knows the difference between a Phillips head screwdriver and a flathead screwdriver. Just one of these awesome creatures. And Yahweh whistles for the whale and says, over here, get this guy floating in the middle of the ocean. I've still got plans for him. So essentially what happens at this stage is that Jonah is rescued by the most unlikely lifeguard of all time. And of course our passage ends with, then Jonah prayed to his God from inside the fish. Very interesting. Okay, but we need to move on to the $64,000 question. And that $64,000 question has to do with exactly what swallowed Jonah, and is it possible? Or are we indeed dealing with a children's story, a parable, an allegory? Let's get out our coloring pages and be done with it. So the title of this part of our lecture is Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About Great Fish swallowing humans. So years ago, I was actually asked to interact with this question for the Labrie Center in Southborough, Massachusetts. Labrie is an organization that was founded by Francis Schaeffer. It's actually designed for secular folk who are asking hard questions and some official person to come in and help them start engaging those questions. So I was the person they chose. I was currently a PhD student at Harvard University, and they asked me to come in and talk about the potential of large aquatic creatures swallowing anyone. So being an academic, I did what academics do. I found a book or two. Berzins, the sperm whale, where I gathered all sorts of great information, and then I started making phone calls to talk to big fish people. So some of the big fish people I talked to were Greg Early, the associate scientist at the Edgerton Research Laboratory at the New England Aquarium in Boston. I talked with David Morin of the Cetacea Research Unit in Gloucester, Mass. I gave Doug Beach a call, the fisheries biologist at the Loire Whale Coordinator of the National Marine Fishery in Gloucester, Massachusetts. These guys were really nice and friendly, but when they figured out why I was calling, well, that's another story. Okay, so what did I learn? Well, regarding sharks, which are a creature that can swallow a human, most of the stories have to do with great white sharks, who are notorious for grabbing humans. And I found out that there were a few testimonials of great white sharks actually grabbing humans whole. They frequent the Mediterranean, that's nice. They can reach 25 feet long, so that's nice. Okay, we're working so far. But as my big fish people told me, it's possible, but it's unlikely. And the reason they said it's unlikely is their feeding habit. You see, sharks don't gulp. What sharks do is they take a chunk, they watch you bleed to death, and they come back and eat you later. That's pretty much the way white sharks operate, so very little comes out of their mouths whole. Now, it is true that the great commentators at the turn of the century, Kyle and Delich, found a testimonial about a great white shark who swallowed a human being and spit him back whole after a ship's captain hit him with a small cannon. I might throw up if someone hit me with a small cannon as well. And that is in their commentary on the book of Jonah. And then there was also an interesting story that came in Weekly World News in 1987 about a Japanese fisherman actually being swallowed alive by a white shark and then being spit out alive, and that hit the news as well. Poor guy was 64 years old. I'm going to guess that went down in the annals of his family records. But again, my big fish people told me not real likely. They suggested is kind of a strong term, redirected me toward whales. What about whales? Well, there actually are a couple of whales that qualify. The sperm whale being the most likely for such a venture. And as the sperm whale was the primary target, the mainstay of the whaling industry during the 18th and 19th centuries, both in our country and in Britain and Greenland and Newfoundland, there's actually a lot of data about interactions between sperm whales and humans. And apparently, because the sperm whale gets really, really big, males can reach 63 feet long, and often grow past 35 feet long, it's quite possible that a 5'6" male human could be consumed by one of these whales. But what is most interesting about these sperm whale is their feeding pattern. Now, first of all, another thing you want to know is that sperm whales themselves are actually quite aggressive. And so we have stories about sperm whales actually attacking humans. Specifically humans with harpoons named Ahab. This actually is kind of an autobiographical story of the whaling industry. So they are aggressive, they will interact with humans, they're carnivorous, and they eat by gulping. In fact, they gulp so much stuff up that half of Berzin's book was full of all the weird stuff they have found in whales' bellies over the years. They always find rocks in whales' bellies, to the point where many scientists for years actually hypothesized that the rocks were essential to their digestion, kind of like a bird that needs gravel in their gullet. And then they finally realized, no, they're just gulpers, and sometimes they get rocks. They have found bundles of barbed wire, they've found red fisherman's boots, they've found baby toys, cosmetics, all sorts of stuff in the belly of sperm whales. And because so many were hunted, and therefore so many were actually dismembered, we know what was in their stomachs. Interesting. So how do they get rid of all this weird stuff that winds up in their stomach because of their gulping feeding pattern? Well, you guessed it. On a regular basis, sperm whales throw up whatever it is they have swallowed that they wish they hadn't have swallowed. And they will throw it up, and these foreign bodies wind up wherever they decide to toss their donuts. The adult male can eat 1, 2, 3 tons of food per day. They have multiple stomachs. Interesting. And the first stomach can hold up to 200 kilograms of food. That's a lot of food. What does the first stomach do? It's used to warm the food and squeeze out excess seawater until the whale is ready to swallow whatever it is he has eaten and put it down in his real stomach. So as I asked one of the big fish guys on the other end of my phone, is it possible that some oxygen could get trapped in that first stomach? And the response was, yes, it's possible. So, sperm whales can and do actually swallow very large things. And again, the whaling industry of the 18 and 1900s gives us a lot of data about the things that whales have swallowed, sperm whales, over the decades. And it gives a great deal of data about how smart and how aggressive these animals can be. And so as you look at these images on your screen, what you are seeing are images of sperm whales being hunted. Now a more interesting question. What do sperm whales, well, let me say it this way. What are sperm whales supposed to eat? And the answer is giant squid, also known as cuttlefish. Giant squid are one of those creatures that live so deeply in the ocean, our marine biologists had never seen one live before a few summers ago. They've seen them dead hundreds of times, but actually alive and in their native habitat, no way. Because the cuttlefish lives at such profound depths, no one had ever been able to observe them in their native habitat. This image you're looking at is a cuttlefish who has itself plastered to a face of a sperm whale who's trying to eat lunch. Because of course the sperm whale wants to eat his lunch, and of course the cuttlefish does not want to be eaten. A fairly standard narrative. How big are these things? Well, first of all, know that they're invertebrate. They themselves are carnivores. A female can reach up to 70 feet long and weigh 440 pounds. And the giant squid's eyeball is as big as a beach ball. And guess how our sperm whale friends eat cuttlefish? Whole. Yes, they eat them whole. So as you look at these images and get an idea of exactly how big one of these cuttlefish is, you get the impression that if a sperm whale can swallow a cuttlefish whole, it probably can swallow a human whole as well. Just guessing. Because these cuttlefish are way bigger than your standard late bronze, iron 1, iron 2 aged Hebrew male. All right, so is it possible that a sperm whale could swallow a human whole? Yes, it is possible. By the way, we have some lovely additional evidence to their diet of cuttlefish, which is that just about every sperm whale ever taken is scarred all around its mouth by the suction cups of the desperate cuttlefish. We also have a lovely story emerging from the Huffington Post in July of 2010, where someone actually observed a mother whale trying to teach her calf how to hunt cuttlefish. And because the calf was a slow learner, the mother actually had part of a cuttlefish dangling out of its mouth and was trying to tempt the calf to follow her so that the calf would learn how to catch its its own cuttlefish. Every mom in the room gets it, right? No, dear, it's time to make your own phone call and your own appointment. Mama's not going to take care of this one for you. And so the Huffington Post reports a roughly 30-foot giant squid caught in the jaws of a mama sperm whale, and this interaction going on in order to train the calf. So yeah, we got cuttlefish, we got sperm. Can they be swallowed whole? Absolutely. And when you take a look at this image and you see your average 6-foot human against your average sperm whale, yeah, I think that sperm whale can handle swallowing a human. Handle swallowing a human is one set of questions. What about the idea of a human actually coming out alive? Okay, let's see if we can hit this real quick. Of whales and men is the next topic on your slide. We have 3 different accounts coming out of the whaling industry of 3 different men who either observed or actively participated in getting swallowed by a whale. So the first one is James Bartley. It's February 1891. The ship is the Star of the East. This has become a very controversial account, but it actually made the newspapers. And so this spectacular account of one James Bartley, who was reportedly swallowed in the course of hunting a large sperm whale off the Falkland Islands. When the whale was finally captured and the crew began dismembering the unfortunate beast, they found trapped inside its stomach the missing sailor. He was doubled up, he was unconscious, but he was alive. And so they cut him out of the stomach, threw a bucket of seawater on him. He ran around the ship like a crazy man, kept that behavior up for about 2 weeks, settled back into life as normal, and returned to his duties. A second account comes from the magazine Natural History in June 1947. Here, an Edgerton Y. Davis Jr. tells of a young sealer who also was swallowed up by a huge sperm whale. The animal was fatally wounded and discovered the next day floating belly up. In an attempt to rescue the remains of the sailor, the folks dismembered the animal and actually found the sailor in the whale's stomach. He had visible injuries to his chest, which was apparently the cause of death, but the man himself was still whole, and the lice on his head were still alive. Now, having spent 4 years in Mississippi with school children, I know how resilient lice can be. But the fact that those lice were still alive speaks something to me. The third account is a certain Marshall Jenkins, October 1771. Here, an Edgerton, USA whaling vessel was attacked by a sperm whale, and one Marshall Jenkins was taken into a whale's mouth, dragged under the surface, and then was spit out on the wreckage of the boat. He was injured but alive. So although these 3 stories come from an era that is perhaps not as researched as things might be in this century, what we have here in sum is yes, it is completely possible that a human could be swallowed by a sperm whale. No question about that. Swallowed whole? No question about that. Even regurgitated? No question about that. The challenge, of course, would be for the man to survive. I think that would take a miracle. But you know what? I think that's exactly what this book is about. So as we conclude this session, reasons not to mess with children. There was a little girl who was talking to her teacher about whales. The teacher said it was physically impossible for a whale to swallow a human because even though it was a very large mammal, its throat was very small. The little girl stated that Jonah was swallowed by a whale. Irritated, the teacher reiterated that a whale could not swallow a human. It was physically impossible. The little girl said, "When I get to heaven, I will ask Jonah." The teacher asked, "What if Jonah went to hell?" The little girl replied, "Then you ask him." Launch question for you. Okay, all you marine biologist types out there. How does this potential that a large, probably male sperm whale might have been wandering around the Mediterranean at just the right moment to play the role of the most unlikely lifeguard of all time strike you? Okay, folks out here, we know it's possible for a sperm whale to swallow an adult human, and it's possible for an adult whale to regurgitate him. How does the potential of a human actually surviving this process strike you? Go.
Well, how does it strike you?
Need a lot of oxygen
That's the only thing I could think about. Or a big air bubble.
Big air bubble, huh? Others, how does it strike you? Are we off the deep end? Are we fishing for things that aren't real? I can work on a ton of puns here. You want me to? What do you think?
Maybe the time element was wrong. Maybe he wasn't in there all that long.
There you go. Could be.
Maybe if it was really cold, people can exist,
Thermal factors.
thermal.
Yeah.
That's the easiest.
Uh-huh.
But the number 3 in the Bible, especially related to Jesus, has a deep meaning, a great meaning.
Keep going. What?
So 3 days.
Oh, 3 days. Oh, I see what you're talking about. Yeah.
It was in a tomb, put him in a tomb,
3 days in the tomb, yes. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
My thought is everything's possible through God.
Absolutely.
There's the issue. There's the issue. If there are some things that point to the possibility, then God can twist and turn and do whatever he wants, including creating a more definitive possibility. Huh. If that's the case, how does that possibility of God doing something like that, or the potential of God doing something like that, strike you? What do you think? He's God. But vis-a-vis the story of Jonah, all of a sudden says, this may not be a children's book. This may be a real person in real space in real time. The definition of what a prophet is and doing things. Real person, real space, real time. Now, I personally, well, let's stop for a second. The challenge here is for the man to live. And that would take a miracle.
What's the possibility he didn't survive the swallowing by the whale and being in the whale's stomach, but when he was regurgitated, God brought him back to life?
There you go. God can do those things, can't he? Yeah. Hey, Jonah, take a nap in the whale. I'll take care of you later. Would this story show up in the Bible in the section on prophets if for some reason or another the individuals of that time, which were much less scientific than we are, gave it some sort of credence? You know, you would, yes, sir.
So, just to let you know, the people around the table aren't being heard online very well, so please speak up.
Oh, these mics aren't picking them up?
Well, yes, but when you speak low, it's hard to hear. You still have to project and speak out. So,
Project, everybody.
please.
Thank you.
Well, there's lots of miracles that have happened, so why couldn't this be one of those miracles?
What's the definition of a miracle?
Unusual, impossible, or we think impossible.
Unusual? Think that it is possible.
We always say with God, anything's possible, as Dave said.
Yeah. Could well be.
I just wish I knew why, how he decides which things are going to be miracles and which things he's going to let nature take over. But we'll ask him someday, right?
Yeah, you won't care.
Yeah.
Perhaps God was saying, I need your attention. That's one way to get it.
But yeah, that's true. That's true. I find it interesting that the biblical text has been very carefully guarded over the centuries. It has come down with a high level of credence and acceptance that it's a real event. Why would a text that the people of its time would say is false, and this is the most likely text for somebody to say is false, but make the cut, so to speak, if we're talking about a sports team? You know, for me personally, I think that would take a referee on the side saying foul. But who's the referee? God. And I don't hear a cry of foul anywhere in all this stuff. Come on, comments, thoughts. Want to go whale hunting?
God told things in parables and stories for people to understand, or to help them understand what he's meaning. And I think here is attention. He did give me the attention.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I find it interesting. If you go into the New Testament, the other story of water, storms, and near drownings is found in the Gospels, and it's found in the case of the apostles trying to make it across the sea, and the sea turning into a really terrible, terrible storm, and everybody's drowning or is about to drown, and here comes Jesus walking on the water. I don't know whether any of you have seen The Chosen, but that's a great scene in The Chosen that really captures how rough and tough that really was. And what comes out of that? Jesus yells at Matthew, well, if you really, Matthew is trying to say, Jesus, if you love me, why don't you save me? And in return, Jesus is saying, if you trust me, why don't you get out of the boat? And he finally gets out of the boat. And as he's about ready to go down, Jesus reaches out his hand and pulls him up. And with that, Matthew gets the courage to walk across the water with Jesus. I'm wondering if we're not dealing with something similar to a test of faith here amongst the people, amongst us. Do you believe that Jesus, or God, and just Yahweh in this case, would do something like that?
Perhaps, she says, sailors were pagans, and yet they were praying to Yahweh and making a sacrifice and vowing and all this to him, so he got their attention.
And there's this thing about an ark a few hundred years before that, that out of nowhere this terrible storm comes and saves all of the animals. The sea is sort of wrapped up at times in God's predictions. It's the rough place to be, as opposed to the Garden of Eden, which is the wonderful place to be. But if you're fighting Yahweh, you're going to be in the rough place, and even in the rough place, he's going to show up. And, to me, that's the message that's starting to float through that float. I love that. And I
Nicely done.
that was not intentional either. To float through the story. Other comments?
In reference to when Jesus was walking on the water, I can't imagine what the disciples thought when they saw him walking on the water. We've never talked about that. There's nothing in there that tells us, that they were in awe, but they had to have been. That was not normal. Crazy.
Other questions? Ryan, do we have any questions coming in from the viewers?
No questions. I had a comment that,
Okay.
and I never thought of this until you mentioned it a few minutes ago about how God has used the sea throughout history to as one way, or sea or water in the case of a storm like with Noah. But as you said that, it occurred to me it's similar to full immersion baptism in a sense. It's stormy. We're on the sea in the storm, like our life. You die. Peter went into the water, and then Jesus pulled him out. And from that point, he was on top of the water, calm, peaceful, could walk on it with Jesus. And it seems to me that it's just another metaphor for our relationship with God, life, death, and our own resurrection in Christ.
Which is the heart of the baptism experience, no matter whether you sprinkle or full immersion.
Yeah.
That is what's supposed to be going on in the baptism.
Right.
Is death to self, resurrection to Christ.
Right.
And by the way, the Methodist viewpoint about infant baptism produces an incomplete act. But the idea of confirmation produces the closure of the act. As a child, you are baptized. As an adult child, you are confirmed, and you accept the baptism, as opposed to adult baptism, which takes it as one whole. That has always been the justification for infant baptism. I have done both. In seminary, I was fully immersed. They told me there was a Baptist seminary, and they said, we're going to go do some sacrament practicing. Oh, by the way, we're going to do some baptism. And Phil, you don't need to do that because we're going to be in a tank. And I said, oh, yes, I am. But I'm thinking more in turn of being in the Holy Land and standing in freezing water for about 3 hours and baptizing people, including my daughter, who at that time had to take her cast off. We had engineered the cast so it could come off and go back on. That is the most meaningful sacramental experience I have ever been in. Even though I couldn't feel the lower half of my body when it was over. But God seems to function in the water for some reason. Okay. Could this be a forerunner of that? I haven't got answers. I have a lot of questions.
Babies are in liquid in the womb.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
And they survive.
Huh?
Yeah, they survive.
And they survive. Yeah.
My mind goes different directions than other people, so I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
That's great.
Don't worry. Gee, that's where I learned to swim. Oh, I didn't know that. Other comments? This one doesn't lend you to as much discussion as a lot of other books that we're going to study. I will say that for me, when we get done with Jonah, I think we'll take the time off until next fall when we will go into the Psalms.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, and for the Psalms, I'm going to want us all to have one of the books. And it looks like the books are going to be someplace in the neighborhood of $20 to $25 a piece.
Wow.
You can have, yeah, they're not cheap. I'm going to try to negotiate some prices, but that's what it looks like right now. And it really depends on the number of people we have. So we will see, but it is a fantastic study book. Onward. Anything you guys would like to add to this?
Well, talk about God using the sea. He separated the sea to let the Israelis escape. Totally.
This is truth. Water keeps popping up, doesn't it? Yeah.
And how's that, if you really think about it quickly, how's that any more a fairy tale than Jonah?
Good point. But I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
And I think sometimes too, when we think about Jonah, when we want to color the three pictures, we miss the point of this was God getting somebody's attention again. And he just has a way of doing that in the most unique ways sometimes.
And now you're at the heart of the book. He's given Jonah a job, and Jonah has run from it, gone the opposite direction. And Jonah's on this boat. Now what's God going to do to get him to go back to where he's supposed to be? Well, there's not many options at that point in time. He's got to get him off that boat. He's got to give him some transportation, and he's got to get him to the point of having some aha moments, which we'll see a little bit later. But the aha comes down to, okay, God, I hear what you're saying. I'm going to do it.
Are we that way? Even now?
I think so.
As far as trying to speak to people? Basically, we're ministering or being missionaries in a way. Talking to people we don't know. He knew, understood those people as far as their reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
We don't always want to speak up either.
Nope. But doesn't he expect us to speak up? See, that's the problem in this modern day. We live in our own little cubicle. We've gone this route here before. But here's another instance of get out of your cubicle, do what I want. And time after time throughout the biblical record, we see God saying, get out of your space and go into mine. And here's another one. This is a very dramatic one, but get out of your space and go into mine.
We don't trust God to give us, not just courage, but maybe the words that we need to speak. We say, oh, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know what place this. So we kind of, like you say, stay in our own little safe place.
It's
We don't
easy to
step
do
into
that.
God's space.
That's
And let
right.
Him guide us.
Yep. Yeah. I have a great, I don't know how many generations back, aunt, who I didn't know until, I don't even know how it came up in conversation with my dad. But she was back at the point in time where women were not preachers or anything. But she was a evangelist in the evangelical church. And why? Because God said so. And that was quite a thing to have happen in that day and age. And the accounts are wonderful about what she did. I wish I had more information on her. I really do. Anybody want to add anything? Anything you want prayers for? Maybe something that got highlighted or gets called into your mind because of the video this week?
Well, just so you remember, this is Donna's last Wednesday with us. So we need to pray for her safety in travel and.
You are gonna return, it's just gone for a while. Okay.
I mean, not till the fall, though.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, we're going to make certain we get someplace for her to live, and then she can be back in time for Psalms. Okay. Prayer requests. Nobody's got any prayer requests? Nobody you want to pray for? Hmm?
I think about the children that are abused or killed by relatives,
Mhm.
trusted grandparents in other states this happened. Our children are not safe anywhere.
They are some of the worst victims in this world. Children. Let's pray. Father, in this short little interlude of this evening, you have challenged us with the impossible being possible. You have challenged us to open our minds and look at places that you may want us to go that, like Jonah, we don't want to go. And you have, through Jonah, said to us in no uncertain terms, go anyway. God, I would just ask that you would help us to look at our own lives, to examine our actions in their fullest, and to come closer to what you want us to be and what you want us to do. Because if it isn't for people like us, your word is not going to get spread in this world. And as I look at the newscasts and read the newspapers, I'm seeing how much this world is deteriorating and how much it needs to hear from you. And we are of the people that are the only ones that can do it. Show us the way. Bless us and use us. In your Son's name, Father. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, thanks, folks. We got 2 more lessons.